Thanks for tuning into today's podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our new remote training here at RPP. We've been offering remote training for quite some time, but we always required the athlete to come in-house for an assessment. Now we can do the whole assessment online and bring all of our services, pitching, hitting, and strength training to your doorstep. So, if you like what we do and how we do it, go to our website at rocklandpeakperformance.com and click on Remote Training in the toolbar. Thanks. The Behind the Seams podcast. I'm your host, Nunzio Signore, looking to bring you great dialogue with some of the best in the world of player development. The world of training baseball players has changed dramatically during the past few years, and I'm looking forward to shedding some light here on what's the latest, what's the best, and what's really happening in the world of player development. Thanks for joining me for the ride. Hey guys, how you doing today? Thanks for tuning in to the Behind the Seams podcast. I'm Nunzio Signore, and today we're going to talk to Phillies pitching coach Vic Diaz. The world of training and coaching pitchers has been turned upside down during the past few years, and no other job has had more thrown at it during this time, from pitch movement data to motion capture to improvements in strength training as the position of the pitching coach in pro ball. Vic is currently the pitching coach for the Clearwater Threshers, the single-A minor league team for the Philadelphia Phillies. So this is going to be a good one as we discuss how all these variables are impacting training pitchers in the minor leagues, and we're going to touch on a bunch of other stuff. So what's up, Vic? How you doing today?
What's up, Nunzio? First off, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm doing all right. Middle of the season right now, so got some late nights and early mornings.
Yeah, man, I appreciate your time. By way of background, I met Vic indirectly through one of my guys who trained with me since high school, John Barone, who pitched for Embry-Riddle. Vic is one of those guys that has a voracious appetite for learning. And frankly, with what's been happening in the world of baseball, there's no other way to go about it. So, Vic, first off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's take it from, you playing ball at St. Joe's in high school up to how you ended up with the Phillies.
Yeah, man. So I've had a pretty broad career as far as like being able to see a lot of things and meet a lot of people and live in different areas. So after St. Joe's in Metuchen, I went to my first year of college at Mississippi State. I was there for a year and then transferred to State College of Florida in Bradenton, and then ended up finishing my college career at Old Dominion. So it was pretty, had some ups and downs through it. Went through a surgery, went through 2 surgeries, but very thankful for the road that I had and thankful that my career ended on a high note. Right after Old Dominion, I went right into coaching because of our volunteer who's from Owensboro, Kentucky. At Old Dominion, and he kind of gave me the connection with Kentucky Wesleyan, so I got right into coaching. He knew I wanted to get into coaching, so there was a pitching job opportunity there, so I took it. Was an awesome year there with a great staff. Then after that, I ended up getting a head college summer job in Virginia Beach, and in the meantime, our head coach at Old Dominion was looking for a volunteer coach, so he asked me to come back, and I was never going to turn down my alma mater because I love that place. I love the school. I love the staff. And then I finished, or after that, I took an opportunity at Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach. Again, had spent 2.5 years there. Was a great opportunity. Enjoyed the coaching staff and had a lot of fun. And then Phillies asked me, or Phillies sought me out, and it was kind of something that was a great opportunity that I felt was getting out of my comfort zone and being able to grow in it for and eventually having a family. So that's how I got with the Phillies.
That's great, man. And when I was talking about that voracious appetite, I've had one of, as a matter of fact, I am looking out the window right now at John Barone out of my office window training. And I will say that when John went to college, Vic was in constant contact with me, and we went back and forth. And he asked me questions, and we went back and forth on John's mocap and injuries and all on strength training. And I was really impressed when I get these guys that come in and they ask these questions of their guys, because a lot of times you will get the college coach that thinks that he's the all-purpose, knows everything kind of guy, and I think that that's a little unfair to the athlete. You know what I mean?
100%.
Do what you're good at, and you know what? Sound out guys on what they're good at. That kid deserves to have the best training regimen that he could possibly have. And by you reaching out to other guys who kind of fill in your blanks, I think kudos to you for that. And I just wanted to tell you, I respect you for that, because as well as the other coaches that reach out to us all the time. So
no, I appreciate that, man. And I think you learn that even more going into pro ball, because so many guys, they take ownership of their career. Like you really are a part of their process,
right.
In pro ball, because they, you just have less control over what these guys do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I always tell myself, and I always try to remind myself, it's about the player, and we have to do what's best for the player. And hey man, if this training regimen is working for you, if this throwing program is working for you, then how can we continue to make it better for you? And if it's helping you, let's continue to do it. So I think ultimately we have to have the best interest of the player.
And I think that's a really higher way of thinking. Kudos to you. And you've coached at the college level and minor league level now. What are the biggest differences in both the role you play as well as the players you're coaching from both their mental and physical standpoint?
So the role that I play, you would like to say that there's a lot of changes and a lot of differences, but I think, if you go about things a certain way, then you don't really see like, oh, I maybe have to do something differently. A lot of it, where in college you really have control over your pitching staff. You have the autonomy on your pitching staff. You have, right. Hey, I want to do this with this certain guy. I want to try this with this certain guy, whatever it may be. In pro ball, thankfully we have a very good group of in our pitching department with really good leadership. Who they do a good job. They give us autonomy. But I think, in pro ball, the one thing that always sticks out is the business of it. So I think there's things that you can't control, that the pitching department can't control, that there's just things above us that, there's plans for a certain player that we may just, you just have to be able to keep on that road and not change anything. And they want to make sure things are done a certain way. So I think in that aspect, there's things that you may not have control of in your role, just because they're above your head, and the business is the business, where you just can't, hey, you may want to do something with another player, but this is the plans that they have for this player. And, that's what we have to do. As far as the player, I think autonomy. So in the coaching aspect, I think you have a little less autonomy. With the player aspect, they have more autonomy for themselves. Yeah,
these guys now are, not for nothing, but they're grown men. So
they're grown men. Yep.
And they, you need to take that into consideration, because if you sit there holding their hand the whole time, you're actually doing more damage probably than good, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think again, but I think that it helps you, become a better coach, because you really learn. You really have to be buttoned up when you come to these players. You really have to, if you're going to come in hot to a player and be like, hey man, I think we should really try this or do this. The first thing they're going to do, be like, dude, like, chill out, but if you come in buttoned up and you've done your research on that player, and you've dove into, things that you may feel he needs to get better at, and things that, we've talked to as a pitching group, and you approach him, you say, hey man, like, I've been watching video on you. I've been doing this and that, and I really think this can help you. They'll buy in, because they're curious, man. These there's a lot of pro players with a lot of curiosity, and they want to get better because ultimately they're trying to be big leaguers.
And that's like, they're there. They do, like you said, they want to get bigger, better. And they're open to it, but it's the approach, right?
It's all about the approach with these guys, man. And, in college where you have more control over your staff and you kind of get to pick your players, you recruit them, you tell them, hey, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we want to do here. This is what we believe in. This is what our head coach believes in. In pro ball, you really are, you have to be buttoned up with how you're doing it because the organization, we do things a certain way. We have a certain process, and we try to integrate as much as we can. But you can't just approach a player and like try to shove things in his face. You got to be able to approach him the right way.
Yeah, I call it spoon feeding. You got to spoon feed them the training adaptation.
Yeah,
right?
You got to slowly drip it in.
Yeah, that's like when it's like guys hate to. I always tell my coaches, listen, these guys are going to come in here. They hate doing mobility work. They just want to get after it, right? So we put it inside the program as a break, okay? And I use it as my way of spoon feeding these guys mobility. Because you give them that first page of all, and you give them every mobility drill under the planet that they need, they're going to look at it. They're going to feel like a hospital patient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not, and you know what they're going to do? They're going to skip them. But if you give them like a deadlift and then you give them a lower body and then you give them maybe a core, and then instead of that 2-3 minute break, you give them a mobility drill. Okay. Now you're building volume in your program. And I think that's the way I spoon feed strength. And I think that's a great way that you spoon feed your guys. Let them know you're trying to help them. It's all about the delivery.
All about delivery and micro dosing it in. Like as long as they understand, and I think even more like I said, it makes you buttoned up as a coach, because It's not like, hey, it's not like you just see something or learn something. You really like what it's helped me with is everything I learn, I want to apply. And if I can't apply it, I'm not going to teach it. So like that's what's helped me with. It's just like, I need to be able to apply. I'm learning to apply, not learning just to learn.
Yeah, you actually, it's addition by subtraction. You figure out what doesn't work and get rid of it, right?
100%.
So a lot of guys want to pursue a career in coaching pro ball like you. What I don't think a lot of guys realize is the workload that the job entails. I know you guys work exceptionally hard. So take us through a typical week during the in-season. I think details, would be great here for some of these guys.
Absolutely. It's definitely, the workload is definitely high.
Take us through a day of Vic Diaz,
All right. Yeah, no, it's definitely high. And I think it's just a reminder, man. And I'm very thankful to have a very great support system with my family, with my wife, and her parents, that they help us tremendously. And they help me kind of live out my dream and be able to coach and help provide for our family as well. But, first off, you're going to spend a lot of time away from your family. And I'm fortunate enough, I'm in Florida, so I get home at least once a week. I always say I get home for 2 nights. But a day for me, you wake up, if we have a home game at 6:30 p.m., I get up, get myself prepped for the day, go over any notes I think that I need to get going when I get to the field. Do and prepare video review. So I always try to do video review 2 days after the guys pitch. So like I'll do video review on Tuesday with the starter who threw on Sunday and any relievers. So I'll prep my video review. I'll prep any bullpens we have, and kind of just prepare myself for the day. And I'll get to the park about 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, get to the park. And then once we get to the park, it's kind of go time.
You've had a full day. You've had almost a full day of work, 6.5 hours before game time.
Yeah. 100%. You go 12 o'clock, you get there, you get yourself ready. And then players report at 12, and then we'll get going at 1. So 1 o'clock, I'm starting video review. I'm doing different things with guys. And the video review will consist of, hey, like maybe we're just going to look at a couple ABs where you had some really good sequences. Maybe there's a pitch that we're really working on that graded well, and we want to make sure, hey man, like how can we hang on to this pitch that was really good? So we'll look at what your hand was doing, different things. Maybe it's, hey, your execution with a certain pitch, not just the shape of a pitch. So something we may have been working on. Hey, are you sticking to your strengths? And I always try to run it down in that order. Like, hey, did you use your strengths well? Did you use your attack plan well? Were you sequencing well? Did you make good pitch selections? And try to like bake it in there. I don't like to overdose video, because in this day and age, you got to get a lot of guys that overanalyze. So I really try to have targeted feedback when giving feedback. That's important to me. I want it because I think when you're given targeted feedback, it hits better and it's more understandable, and you give them a plan going into the week. It's not just, hey man, you did this, this, and this, and this well. Like, no, what did you do really well? What is your strength? Did you execute that well? And if you didn't do something well, why? Let's like, instead of you telling, hey man, you didn't do this well, like, well, maybe this is why you didn't do this well. So, that's how I try to cover my video review, and I try to make it really open-ended with them. So after video review, we'll throw in 2 different groups. So I'll have the first group throw. It'll be a group of pitchers who like starters, any guys maybe not available that day. And then we'll get their work in. We'll get any touch and feels in, get on the mound, whatever those guys may need. And then we'll have another group coming to throw, which is basically all the relievers that'll be hot that day. And the reason we do it in 2 groups is just, hey, get more time with them, get more attention on them instead of just having 16 guys throw at one time. After that, we'll roll into BP. I'll either throw a round of BP and then help out with fungo. And then after the first round of BP, we'll get our bullpens in. So usually the bullpens will consist of our starters who are later in the week, and then any relievers that want to get off the mound, anything that we're specifically working on. If maybe they just want to get some movement work in, we'll use a core velo belt. We'll use anything, anything to our disposal. After that, when BP finishes, you get a little downtime, and then you run right into a pitcher catcher meeting for that night. So you got the starter for that night, you get the catcher for that night. You'll go over the plan. You'll talk about whatever it may be that is important about this team. We'll highlight 2 or 3 hitters. We don't try to, we're trying to help these guys understand how to use their strengths first at this level. And then we'll highlight 2 or 3 hitters on how we want to attack them. And then after that, we roll right into the game. And then, your 6:30 game could end at 8:30, game can end at 9:30, sometimes 11, sometimes 12. Like last week, we had a full day, and we had a delay, and we didn't throw the first pitch of that delay after that delay until 10:20 p.m.
Oh,
yeah. So, and some days you're waking up early the next day, like
that's what I was going to ask you when there's no game. That's what I was going to ask you. But what about when there's no game? That's
when there's no game, it's great, man. Like, so we don't play. So minor league wide, you get Mondays off.
Right.
So it's great. And that's the day I really try to unplug, because when you're going 6 days in a row playing games, and you're getting after it. Like, this week in particular, I'm going to head to the park here soon. And we'll get our pregame work here, because we're commuting this week just because we're playing in Bradenton. So it's an hour away. So we're not staying in a hotel. So I'll get to the park. We got one group of throwing at our place, and then we'll get on a bus drive, and then we'll have another group of throwing. And then, so it gets, it's a lot, and mentally and physically, but it's fun, man. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, man. So how about the offseason a little bit? One of our former coaches, Robbie Aviles, who coached in the Orioles system for probably about 3 years, was basically always on call to go to Florida or the DR during the offseason. What about after putting a long season in, what's it look like for a minor league pitching coach?
Yes, I think it really depends on your on your role. Like if I'm just a minor league pitching coach, so the off season we pretty much get a lot of downtime, which is phenomenal. Like it's, you get to spend consecutive months at home with your family. Now there's things that we'll meet as a pitching group once or twice a week. We'll go over a couple things, but like I said, thankful for our really good leadership in our pitching group and our farm director and all those involved. They really understand life and family.
Yeah. And
So,
the importance of that.
and the importance of that, man. And I think like, and I'm appreciative of that because that's my number one thing. Like I'm always going to be able to make sure that it's right for my family. So, yeah, we'll get on calls and then it'll get to a point where, hey, like we're 2 months out of spring training. And we got to start diving in and doing our homework on players and pitchers and going over plans heading into spring training. But that's really the extent of it. We may meet as a whole player development staff, once every couple weeks and go through that. So you got a couple meetings, you got a couple calls you may have to attend to throughout the week, and then start helping building the player plans.
So in response to that, how much interaction do you actually have between other pitching coaches in the organization at different levels?
So I personally, I try to make sure that I talk to them often, because for me, we're a team, and I want to make sure that, most of all, like going through the season, it's hard. There's pressure. There's a lot of things going on, but I always just like to reach out and ask how their family's doing. How are they doing? Personally, just because I think it's important. And I think when you have people reaching out, they'll reach out as well. And it makes you feel good just because somebody's asking you something about other than baseball, so I try to talk to them often and stay in that relationship with them just because we're a team and we'll bounce ideas off each other. We have a really good pitching group, man, as far as pitching coaches at every level. We'll call each other, hey man, like, what do you got on this? Like, what are some things you do with this guy or hey, like, how are you approaching this type of guy, whatever it may be. And then you talk to them as well when a guy gets moved up, you want to make sure, hey, this guy, this was his routine when he was here. This is what it worked for him. This is not like you want to make sure that you give them all the information they need when a guy gets called up to the next level.
That's awesome answer. Given the minor league's basic premise of player development, how does winning or losing a game come into play? I mean, in the minor leagues, obviously, you're there to develop these guys. This is a grassroots system, right? So in other words, you obviously are playing to win, but is the emphasis more on developing your players or winning?
So it's a good question. I think this is a battle that the minor leagues faces everywhere. For me, and this is how I like to put it, you're developing to win. And I think like what I mean by that is you're developing ways, you're developing skill sets, you're developing different things to help each player win individually that eventually helps the team win. And so like when I'm looking an example, if I'm looking at, hey, we look at numbers and you're looking at it and you sit down with a guy, you'd be like, hey man, like you're really not finishing hitters at a high clip, right? All right, like why are we not finishing hitters at a high clip? So you continue to unpeel the layers and you're like, all right, well, I think your pitch selection may be wrong when you're up in the count and you're in 2 strike counts, or you may be throwing a lot of waste pitches, or you're not getting a lot of swings and misses. So like then we'll unpeel the layers back on that and be like, hey, maybe we need to make your slider better. And we'll go dive into that. And I think that's what I mean by you're developing to win is you're developing a guy's stuff. You're getting him better so that he can ultimately perform better.
Okay, but what about when you develop a guy's stuff, and you're doing it right now in season, and the guy has to learn to retension his throw, and he may not perform the best for a little while, and that can cost you some games. That's an example of maybe where the player's development takes precedence over winning.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's that's part of it. Like I don't think it takes precedent. I think that's part of it. Like, hey man, like we got to get this better. You got to throw it in game, just like anything. Like a guy may need to play 4 games, 6 games a week,
right?
And he may be tired, but hey man, when you're in the big leagues, you're going to play 162. So you got to understand how to get through it and do it. So I don't think it's really taking precedent for me, which it's a really good way to put it that you put it, but I don't think it's really taking precedent for me. I think it's something that, hey, it's understanding for me to be able to continue in my career and develop and then perform at the next level. I have to be able to do this. I have to be able to make this better. So, whether it's, I wouldn't necessarily say it costs you games. You may not perform as high as great as you wanted to, but you also find your spots to do it, right? Like if a guy's working on it, guys working on a pitch, I'll say, hey man, like let's throw it early and late. Let's throw it early and late. If
Right.
Let's fight our good windows for it. So it's not like we're gonna just go out there and dose them out. It's gonna be, hey, all right, we're working on this pitch. We're going to continue to work on it in our bullpen. And then in the game, we're going to continue to nudge it a little more. So when we find good opportunities to throw it early in the count, let's throw it in early in the count. If I'm a lefty working on a slider, all right, I'm going to throw it early in the count to lefties when I get them. So you find ways to bake that in because you want guys to perform well. But we all also understand, we know that this pitch is going to help them for the next level. This pitch is going to help them in their career. And just like anything, you just try to continue to bake it in. And I mean, I thought we said it earlier. It's how your delivery, your approach with it, and having some feel for how to go about that process with the guy.
That's awesome. Okay. Here's a good one for you. So how is tech changing training in the minor leagues? And how did you adapt to it coming from a school that maybe didn't have as much tech, or maybe they did? But can you talk a little bit about what maybe a young coach may need to know about tech, and how is it changing? How's it changing training since you've been watching it over this last 3 to 5 years change?
I personally, for me, it has made things so much more precise. And I think that's the best way any young coach can look at it, or any coach trying to understand tech. It's made your training, it's made you as a coach more precise. And instead of just trying to spitball things, there's ways where you can go and get the information you need to help this player get better. And you have proof, you have things you can do, you have things you can show. So for me, ultimately, it's made training more precise. It's made guys, it's trained our eyes better as well. I think, you hear a lot of people like, hey, you use your eyes. But now when you're able to match up what you're seeing with what it really is, then you can start to really make what you're seeing better.
I agree 1,000% on that. A thousand percent. I look at mocaps every day, and I look at mocaps and I see what it says, and then I look at the guy throw afterwards, and I'm like, okay, I can see where I might have missed that. You know what I mean? And it makes now I could see it. And so a lot of times I'll talk with somebody and they'll disagree with me. And I'll say, you know what? Let's look at the mocap. Not like that's the final word, but it does see things, when I want to see if a guy's shoulders and his spine are perpendicular, I can kind of see that, but I can't see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can go look at that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's loose shirts. There's baggy stuff when they're training. There's all kinds of things that can hide how the body's really moving, and doesn't define me as a coach or you as a coach, and it doesn't really define the player in the final sense. It sends up a red flag that we have to. Lets us go. It lets us look down maybe the right rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
And that's exactly it. You keep yourself from going down these rabbit holes. And ultimately, I mean, like you said, it doesn't define us as coaches, but we have to remember why we do this. It's about the player. And if there's a way that we're going to get a player by being better, by being more precise and more exact, because it's his career. And I think every coach should take responsibility for that, to give the player the right information.
And it's also important, like, to get them better, but it's also important a lot of times, hey, let's grab another mocap, or let's get another assessment on the table. Because you know what? Things have changed in a bad way a little bit. You know what I mean? So let's see, when you were killing it, what has slipped? What looks different? You know what I mean?
And that's exactly what you do. You can see, you see trends, you see what happens. Like, I love looking at pitch movement. I love looking at it. I love looking at matching it up with Edgertronic and seeing what guys' hands do. And you look at a guy's slider or a guy's fastball or a guy's changeup for 4 weeks at a time. You're like, man, this thing's really good. Like, it's been playing up, it's been doing good. And then you see, hey, it's declined a little bit. All right, like, what's going on? And what happens is, if you don't have the information, if you don't have the tech, if you don't have some of those things you can help analyze, is you're going to go right to, well, maybe you're doing this and this when your hand. We're like, hey, a lot of what we do with our pitches is based upon how our body's moving. Are we physically tired right now? Are we locked up in a certain area? Am I losing range of motion in a certain area? And that's why my slider I'm not able to spin it a little bit now. So, I think, for me, again, like, I think as a coach, I hold myself accountable tremendously for this, because I look at it this way, and I think this is what pro ball's taught me about being buttoned up when you come to a player. It's like, it's my responsibility to make sure I give this guy the right information, period. There's no other way about it, because, like, it's his career. It's his career, and I have to make sure I give him the right information, because truthfully, you can, as a coach, and we've all done it, we've given guys wrong information.
Right.
We've done it. And like,
if you haven't, then you have not coached long enough.
Exactly. And I'm not afraid to admit that, but I've learned from it, and
Right.
I've gotten better from it. And that's why I hold myself accountable. Is like, hey, like, I want to make sure that, at least if I'm going to give this guy information, it's going to be precise information. It's going to be information that I know fits him.
And I think it's important what you said about looking at a guy's spin, or looking at a guy's ball movement or his arsenal, and not just always thinking about, okay, man, you've got to change your grip. You said, hey, you might have to change your grip. We might have to throw this differently. But you also said you might have some movement issues that are creating that, And I think it goes the same thing when you're looking at, like, motion capture. I think people think that, facilities with motion capture just look at a mocap and don't look at video, and then they just start prescribing throwing drills. You know what I mean? It's not, the throwing drills for me is the final element, because if I see something in mocap, I have to first decide, is that a movement issue? Because if it's a movement issue, a throwing drill is not going to work, because you're not going to be able to get into the right positions to perform
100%.
that throwing drill. And you're going to just do the throwing drill wrong. And you're going to be, a hamster on a wheel.
100%. And you said it earlier, Nuns. I mean, you said, like, you go, you look at a mocap, and then you get a guy, you may have to get a guy on a table, like, and that's what I've learned about mocaps and biomechanics, is like, hey, we can look at this thing all day long, but if I don't know this guy's body anatomically, then what his anatomy is like, hey, what's his tissue like, and all this stuff, then it's gonna be tough for me to really dive into a mocap. But you really understand, when a guy's on the table, you understand why he does things a certain way in a mocap.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, because we are in the private sector here. We have put a big basis on movement and strength. The first thing a guy does when he comes in for an assessment, the first thing we do is we weigh him in, and then we put him on the table, right? Yep. And we start looking at ranges of motion. And we're at the point now where I would say 8 times out of 10, I can almost tell you what a guy's video is going to look like and where his mocap is going to drain, just by, if I see really poor movement on the table, I know that I'm going to see low lead leg angular velocity, or we're going to see a guy that's overusing his arm, or, you know what I mean? Or a huge tilt because he's pulling off early because of T-spine rotation. And that's a big player in helping to use tech, because sometimes I think I'm going to see that, and then I look at the mocap and it's great. So I'm like, this guy is able, because if you see a movement issue and it transfers into great mechanics. A lot of times, unless it means that athlete's going to get injured, we don't change that.
Yeah, because
You know
he's
what I mean?
moving efficiently for him,
He's
right?
moving.
Like
That's
he's
the final.
maximizing what he does.
That's the final word. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
that's great. That was awesome. Can you give us an idea of how pitchers get moved up or down through the system to some of these young aspiring players? What are some of the circumstances that would warrant, say, a guy to get called up?
So I'll speak for the levels that I've been at. In rookie ball and low A, like we just had one of our, a really good pitcher in our system move up to high A, younger guy. And he was dominating this league and did a really good job in this league. And I think
When you say dominating this league, just give me an example of like dominating the league.
He had a 1.38 ERA and 69 strikeouts through 38 and 2/3 innings. So I'd say he was doing all right. So and he earned that, and he deserves that. And I think a lot of times guys move up. Like the elephant in the room is like, hey, a guy gets hurt, right? Like you need to get a guy up there. So I don't think what people realize in the minor leagues, you do have roster limits as well. You have numbers you have to stay on board with. Like I know with us right now, you have 30 to a roster. There's minor league systems that you have a total number of players as well. So there's a lot that's involved in that, as far as, a guy may get hurt. A guy, his age, we need to start pushing him a little more. A guy starts getting 24, 25, and it's time to really get going. However long the guy's been in the system, we need to see if he's going to start performing. And then you get guys who, they may be young, but they need more time to, like, you may have a guy in rookie ball. He's young, he's, really good arm, but he may need more time just to, be in the zone more with his heater, or really pick up a second pitch so that he can really develop and perform at the next level. So I think that's where, we want to you want to put guys in the best positions to succeed. So if you have a young guy with a really good arm, you don't want to just you're not holding him back, but you want him to be able to compete when he gets to the next level,
Right.
And I see it. So I think there's really a lot of variables, and ultimately, truthfully, there's a lot of things that are way out above my head and way out of my control, or any of our control, because the organization, like I said, may have plans for a guy. So that's what happens. I don't know, how that works, but because I'm not in those rooms, but so I think guys get hurt. Guys stay down because they need to continue to develop a certain pitch, or be in the zone more, or just get the experience at that level. Guys' age may dictate it, and how long they're in the system, it may dictate it.
So I got one or two more questions for you. So what are your thoughts on the restructured minor leagues, fewer teams, et cetera? I know it went from, I think, I can't even remember, I think it was 14 to 11 in teams. And can you talk a little bit about that? Fewer teams, better salaries, and how are they handling these guys now? And how has it changed what you do?
So I've only been in it for 2 years. So prior to, I haven't seen anything, for me personally, I haven't seen anything different. As far as I haven't been a part of the organization when there was a short season.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know from that standpoint, but I will say, you talk with guys who've been in the game for a long time. And they say that we are missing some teams. We are missing the league a little bit because, rookie ball to low A is a bigger jump than what people think it is now.
Right.
Because you get guys accustomed to playing under the lights, and you get guys accustomed to doing it every day.
Okay, so we're going right into my final question. So I know you get a lot of rookies in your program. What's the biggest adjustments that you see for these guys when they arrive?
The biggest adjustment is getting used to the environment every single day and getting used to the workload every single day. You know, it's from 12 to when the game ends, and how you go about that process every day. Because guys have the skill sets, right? Like, they have the talent. It's just the maturity of like, hey man, I got to go through this thing every day and have this thing out ready every day. And that's why you see big leaguers be big leaguers, man, because like those guys are so meticulous and monotonous about everything that they do, that yeah, I think that's the biggest adjustment is you get guys used to playing in that environment every day. There's a different pressure. You got fans in the stands, you got games that are important. You know, all the games are important. You got games that are important, and you want to perform. You're under the lights, and guys need to get accustomed to just doing it every day. You know,
that's a great judge of character for a guy for an organization to know if this guy actually has what it takes to actually sustain that.
Yeah, and that's, you said it, like, it's about sustaining it. It's like, can you come up and do it every single day? And I think that's the biggest thing that guys have to learn is like, how do I need to prepare myself every single day to be able to help my team win and continue to get better.
Amen.
You know,
this has been fantastic. We've been here talking with Phillies minor league pitching coach Vic Diaz. Vic, thanks for coming. Vic, how can people, do you have any social media handle that people can see you at?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Vic Diaz 32 on Twitter is my Twitter. I believe that's what it is.
Great, yeah. And we'll keep you posted on John Barone. I know, he's one. You got a soft spot for that guy. You can reach me at Nunzio Signore on Twitter. You can reach RPP, my facility, on Twitter and Instagram at RPP_baseball, or go to our website, www.rocklandpeakperformance.com. I also have a book out on strength training using bar speeds and velocity-based training. It's called Velocity-Based Training, How to Apply Science and Technology and Data to Maximize Performance. You can pick that up on, it's published by Human Kinetics, and you can pick that up on Amazon. And Vic, thanks so much, man. I really, really appreciate you sitting down and talking with us.
I appreciate you, Nunzio. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for taking care of Johnny B. Always appreciate our conversations, man. And thank you for everything that you do for coaches, for players, and the baseball world. It's really appreciated, man. I know you work tirelessly, and obviously you're in the great state of New Jersey.
Thanks, Vic. Much appreciated. And thanks for y'all for tuning in. See you on the next one.